Part 1 of animation, beginner's animation. So we aren't going to be doing flashy moves today. I know it's a bummer, but uh, we can't go to that instantly. So today we are just going to be learning about um, how to animate stuff, like how to use the animation interface and stuff, which is this one over here on top. If you open your blend file, usually it's right here in the middle or somewhere along this line. You just click on that, and yeah, we'll be learning, like, checking out the graph editor. We'll also be checking out different interpolations, maybe, if we need. And yeah, that should set us up for the animation. Just wait. So to start the animation in the animation viewport, this over here is usually the camera viewport. This is where we put our camera. So if I add a camera, so to add a camera, you press, like, hold shift and press A, and it brings this add menu. If you don't know how to do that, you can just go here, press this add, and come down here to add a camera usually. Now to position it, you press G and move it, and if you cannot do that, usually you press T, or you press that button over there, and this thing comes in. Then you press this move button, click on it, and move it somewhere where you want to move it. But it would be way better if you just learn how to do it with the G, because in animation, going here and moving stuff like this, it's gonna take a lot of time and it's gonna drain you basically. So just learn to rotate. It's R, rotate. With S, it's scale for S, and then G for grab, where you can grab it. If you don't have a mouse, because some people like to work with a laptop or something, you can use these things over here. So you have this thing for grab, and I think it's this thing for zoom in and zoom out, and this thing is for rotating your camera. So these are also like nice gizmos. You can also disable them from here. This is where the gizmos viewport is usually. Now the most basic stuff that you need to know about animating is these things, and this whole panel over here, which is the timeline. Right now it's a dope sheet, but this is the timeline. The first thing what you need to do is turn on this key over here. It's called auto keying. This is gonna save you a lot of time, and it's basically a lifesaver. So when you turn this on, what this basically does is, if I move this, it puts in a keyframe automatically, which if I don't have this on and I move this like this, let's say on frame 1, and then let's say before I'm going way too fast, sorry. So if you to put in a key which basically tells Blender that this object is gonna, like, the position of the object is gonna be this. So I put it over here, and then you press I. Usually it's I. It's a keybind, default keybind. I don't know if someone's working with the Maya keys. I think it's S, but usually it's I if you didn't mess with the keybinds. So here, when you press I, there is a location, rotation, scale, location and rotation, and location, rotation and scale. These are the basic 5 options that you are going to be using. Most probably you won't be using any of, you won't be using this one. These 3 maybe, but like 99% of the time you'll be using this one, which is location, rotation and scale. It's all in one package basically. So you don't have to worry about the rotation not getting keyed. So you press this, it puts in a keyframe, right? Usually you press I, and it's already over here for me in quick select. So that's how I put in my keyframe. So what this keyframe does is, this is like a block of data. So if I go here on 20 and I move this like this, like I moved it from right to left, and I don't have this turned on, if I play, it will go back over here, because the last data that it had is right over here, which is having the location, the rotation, and the scale. So yeah, this thing needs to be turned on, because if it's not, you have to move. When you move it, you have to key this every time, and if you forget it, like that's gonna waste your time. You might get rage and you quit. So yeah, that's the first thing you need to do. Click this. So now if I go to like 40 and I move this and I go back and play, it goes from right to left easily. But usually you don't really use usually you use cameras, but today we won't be using cameras, we'll only be using this one. So to turn, like to vanish or cancel a window like this, you click on this middle line, this line that comes from top to bottom, which it separates these two windows. You just hold, like just put your cursor over here, you press right click, and then you press join areas. Now you have this thing. So what this thing does is it tells you, like if it's here, it says that this thing is gonna be merged to this side, or if it's here, it's gonna be telling that this side is gonna merge into this one. Right now we need to do it like this, because we need to make this space bigger. You can also just go to layout and do this. I usually prefer to be in animation, just out of habit, so yeah, it doesn't really matter. This thing, usually if you go to like move your camera around like this, for me, while I'm animating, basically this. So today we are going to be doing a bouncing ball and a pendulum. If we have time, we will do a pendulum too. You press this. So what this does is it puts you in one camera view. It's right now it's X. If I click this again, it's minus X. This is minus Y, and this is Y, and then you go to up. Right, so that's the basic viewport. Over here it's I told you this one. You can also go into the dope sheet. Dope sheet and timeline is basically the same. What timeline has more than dope sheet is this thing, which I don't know why they didn't added this into dope sheet. But so what this is, it's the start and the end of your timeline. So when you press render, this is what it starts and ends at, the render that you do. This thing shows the active frame, which is right now it's 40. We'll take it to 0. It's 0 now. So yeah, so to start doing a bouncing ball today, we'll just press hold shift and press A. Then it's go to the mesh, come down here, and there's a UV sphere which looks like a ball. It's pretty near. We shade it smooth. So if you shade smooth, the edges are gonna be smoother, but if your PC isn't good, you shouldn't be doing that, or this thing over here, this auto smooth button. Don't click this if your PC isn't good, because Blender isn't good with maths. Yeah, it sucks at maths. So yeah, usually just remember that. So for today, I'll just use this thing because it's easier and you can see everything. Usually I wouldn't be using this. I would just press G and move it, G and press Z for the Z axis, X for the X, which you can't see, and Y for the Y axis. So it goes like this: G for Y, for X, and for Z, right? Because that's easier to do it that way. I'll press X to go into the X axis view, so I can only move it in X axis and it's easier for me to see. So now we just move it on the, like put it on top over here, right? And now we just gonna zoom in. To zoom in, it's the mouse scroll wheel like this. You zoom in and out, and you press, like hold shift and press the middle mouse button to pan around and stuff in this viewport. So right now we have a keyframe on this over here. We go here, we have a keyframe. Yes, it's because we are using auto key. So let's start making a bouncing ball. So I'll go to frame 10 and let me just make one bounce, and then I'll show you how to do that. So just go to frame 10, bring it down right here, and then let's go to frame 20, and here we can just bring it up, but we aren't going to be doing that because you can also duplicate these keys. So usually when you're trying to duplicate it, you press the top, this marker over here. You shouldn't be pressing these ones below, because the top one is like, it selects everything. If you go down here, you can see there are some things like the x-axis and the y-axis which has this straight yellow line. What this line indicates is that this value hasn't been changed at all, right? If I go down here, none of those values are changed, only this value has been changed, which is z location, which is this one, which we changed obviously. So if you want to change, like just copy this, you can do that, but usually you click on this one on the top part and you hold shift and press D for duplicate. You can also press G to grab and move it. It's the same as you do with this viewport, like the way you move stuff in viewport and duplicate stuff. So it's the same over here too. There's also a neat little trick which is called scaling, which we use to like what okay, so if I want to duplicate these both, bring it over here, but now I want to have this one over here and this one over here. So like I want to switch them, just put your cursor in the middle, select these both and press scale minus and 1. So what this does is, if I scale them down, down and down, and if I come to 0 and if I go out again, what this does is it changes this position, it comes in and then starts going this way, and the same goes for this one. So usually that's a pretty new trick you need to learn while doing animations. Tricks like these help you a lot, like in time efficiency. It's not gonna help you in like making good animations. It's just gonna make your workflow faster, basically. So over here, this ball comes down, we press this and duplicate it to 20th. Now we'll just make a small loop for now, right? So over here I click on this and I press 20. Now to make loops, you have to remember that this keyframe, you see this isn't highlighted, which means our animation starts from 1. So that's why I have to put the end to 20 so I can see this keyframe. Now this keyframe and this keyframe, these both are the same. If I click here, it's on the top, click here, it's on the top. That's how loops are. If you want to loop something, you press the first, like the top part of this thing, and just press shift D and take it to wherever you want the loop to end. So when the loop ends, it's the same. Now if you see this, it's just going up and down, but it's not really bouncing. That's where we go into the graph editor. So what a graph editor is you can basically precisely change the way your character, or this, in this case this ball, is animated. So to get to the graph editor, you press on this thing, this clock button over here, you come down to the graph editor, which is right over here. There's also drivers and annihilator. This thing, you don't click on this thing, we will learn this in later sessions. For now, what we need to know is this graph editor timeline. These are the two things we need to know. So now this thing might be a bit confusing, but it's not. So basically what this thing is if we put this like this and click on Z location, so it tells us that this graph is Z location. If you are like me and you don't want to go here, what I do is click on this and move it. That's when I know, okay, it's Z location. Like I move it and just press right click to cancel the effect, like cancel my movement. So that's how usually check if this axis is the right one. Plus it's color coded, so z axis usually in Blender means up and down vertical, which is z axis. So over here this thing actually shows us the speed at which this is going up and down, and this from left to right is the timeline. So usually in my case it's set to 24 fps. You can change this from here. There are like different stuff, and you can also put in a custom one. Usually you work on 24. So you just look at this and see that okay, so the more it goes inwards like this curve, it comes down, which means it's moving downwards. So this thing is just the location, it doesn't show you anything else. Usually in ball bounces people think that if this is something like this, it's gonna make a ball bounce, which it might in this case, but it's not supposed to do that. This thing over here smaller, right? So we click on this, we scale it down like this and make it like a straight thing. So it goes up, gets a bit of hang time over there, starts coming down with like full force, right? If you want to like make the hang time a bit faster, you can also click on this, scale it up. So now what this has done over here is, see this, so it comes down and it just, so let me show it to you in frame by frame. It starts coming down, speeds up, speeds up, speeds up, and over here it hits, then it starts goes up, it starts to go up over here, goes up, and that's how like basic bounce ball is. Now if you want to make it a bit better, you put in squash and stretch. That's another rule of the 12 principles of animations, which you need to learn. You didn't need to learn a lot or like every principle. From my point of view, there are only two main principles that you need to learn, which are like timing and spacing or posing, right? So if you know at which time which pose needs to be there, then you can do animation. The squash and stretch and the staging and smear frames and all the other things, they are basically the combination of these two from my point of view. And I'm not a professional, so don't take it as like uh, professional advice, but that's what I think. That's how I animate. So over here, this thing might look not decent, but it might look like a bouncing ball. But now we need to add some squash and stretch. So what squash and stretch is like smear frames. What smear frames are is so usually in videos that we shoot in real life, they have motion blur. What motion blur does is it shows us the speed in a frame. So like if it's something like this and you make it like this shows that it's going way too fast in the z-axis, that the shutter can't even see it properly. So to fake that, basically in 3D or in 2D, you use smear frames, and they are really great. You also use smear frames to show the toughness of an object. No, it's not a Looney Tunes. It's Tom from Tom and Jerry. Yep, that's it. It's Tom. So here, so we are gonna be making some squash and stretch. Usually, if a ball is really rigid, like a rock, so a rock doesn't bounce a lot. So if you like over here, it's looking really bad because it's not squashing and stretching, and still it's bouncing so much, which is really bad. That's not what we need to do. Another thing in squash and stretch that you need to know is usually people, what they do is in squash and stretch, that they just the way I'm doing this thing is scaling it. So if you click on scale and you press this is what scaling does. it scales the object. And if you have this thing turned on, what it does, if you scale it, it puts in a keyframe, which we aren't going to be doing right now. So over here, I'll go back to the timeline, because over here in this viewport, it's really easy to see everything. Okay, so in squash and stretch, what people usually do is they just squash it like this, but that's not how you do it. You basically need to maintain the volume. So if you squash it like this, you have to stretch it like this, because the volume stays. It's just the mesh deforms kinda. So over here, as it's coming down, and before that, what we need to do is make the animation a bit smaller, because it's way too big. Let's see how this one works. Okay. Yeah, this kind of works, but let's make it 15 frames. Okay, this is good. So over here, so now we're going to be making squash and stretch. So let's say it's like in frame 5, or let's say frame 6. Over here it starts to go in, like the speed is at its kind of max. So over here what we need to do is we stretch it like this, but we aren't going to be just stretching it like this, because then the volume is way bigger than initial volume. So we make this thing a bit smaller. We also make this thing a bit more smaller. So what this gives us, it's an illusion of this going in fast, right? So if I just look at it, you see that it just goes down and it's a bit faster than, like, it seems good basically. And over here, when it just touches the ground, what I'm gonna do is put in another frame where it touches the ground, extend this one more frame, and what I'm gonna be doing for this frame is, thanks dude, yeah, so for this frame what I'm gonna do is this thing stretches, like, no, squashes actually. So with all that force that it's coming down with, it shouldn't be staying as like this rigid solid ball, right? So we make it stretched, like it gets squashed. I keep on saying stretched for some reason, like this. So you know, when a baseball, when you hit it, it just warps around the bat, or like when you throw a ball to the ground, it stretches before it goes up. So that's what we are going to be basically mimicking over here. So if we check this, goes down, squashes, and then we are going to be duplicating this again over here, or we can use my technique of just scaling it with -1. Oh, sorry, duplicating first. So we duplicate it. I can also move it like this. Now I scale it with -1, and then just move it a bit nearer. Or I can just remove this one altogether. See what it does. Before that, let me also remove the location from here, this thing. So this is the Z location, which I don't want over here. I want the original location. That's what we are going to be having. Now so to remove this, you basically press on this bottom down thing, and it shows you all the details. So there's the X location, the Y location, the Z location, and we just deleted the Z location over here basically. Now let's see how this looks. So here you see this. Now this thing looks a lot more better than the solid rock that we had before basically. Thank you. So that's how a squashed ball should be. If a ball is jumping higher, than normal. Like obviously it can jump higher than from the point it was thrown at, because that's basic physics. But if it jumps higher than normal, that means there's gonna be some squash and stretch. If it's not jumping and it's just like dropping down and just jumping over here and then just going down and to the right side, that means it's a solid rock. A rock doesn't bounce, so we don't have to use like smear frames for that usually. And that's basically your bouncing ball. This is a bouncing ball basically. What we need to do more now is take this bouncing ball. Now we only had one axis, which was the Z axis, and we take it to the Y axis, which is this one. So now we'll be moving the bouncing ball like this, and it's gonna be a bit more realistic, where it's gonna start from the top, it's gonna bounce, then it's gonna bounce again, and then again, then again, and at the last it's gonna move its lose its momentum and just go off screen. So we'll try to remake that one now. I'll hide this ball, don't want to delete this because we spent a lot of time on this. So yeah, so let's add another ball. Press hold shift D, shift A, and then select a UV sphere, which is this thing. Now let's start it from here. Start it off. Sorry, I'm not using this thing as again because I'm used to using G. I'll try to use these gizmos a lot so that you guys don't lose track. And before that, usually I just like to press I and put in all the keyframes in, right? So over here it's done. Now I'll just increase this and thingy too. Now that, sorry, let's do this. So it's, let's see, let's go on 5 frames intervals. So it's 0, 5, then 10, 15, and so on. And at the end, when we do that, so in animation basically you have to block out your poses first, which we are going to be doing now. So this is the first pose, this is the second pose, right? And we go to 10, and we started off with this line, this big line. So at 10 we are gonna be, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we are gonna be putting it somewhere over here, right? Now 15, we'll take it and put it over here, right? And increase this, we take it to 20, and you put it like somewhere over here or even over here. Then 25, put it here. Then let's take it to 30, which is just like this, and it's 35, which is this. So we'll make the animation only to like 35 frames. Hopefully that's enough. Now these are not the correct timings, so we are now going to be fixing the timings on this. So see, it's really bad, but we'll fix the timings now. First of all, we have to see how it goes. It comes down, clips, goes up. So now we are going to be slowly decreasing the times. So let's just decrease it like this, by 1 frame only, not a lot. And it's basically trial and error. The end ones aren't gonna be that much, so let's make the end ones first, which are like only 3 frames, which shouldn't be even 3 frames. Let's just keep it 3 frames. 3 frames, it's good. Keep it 3 frames. This one should be a bit like 4 frames. Yeah, let's see how this works. So now that it's looking not that bad, we'll go over to the graph edit. So this time the graph editor is gonna look like this a bit more complex. So this green line is showing us this y-axis, which is this thing. Usually what I like to do is delete the middle parts. What that does it, we have a straight line from point A to point B, so we don't have to fix these lines like this every time. So we do that first. We delete all these. Now we have a Bezier curve. What this does, it starts off slow and goes fast and then becomes slow at the end. We don't want that. We want a steady pace of starting and then slowing at the end. So what we will do is either we select the interpolation over here and press linear, which we shouldn't. I don't usually do that, or I can just scale this over here. So okay, so you press so you can also scale each edge of this curve like this. If you have ever worked with the Adobe Illustrator, it's the same basically. You can if you press this middle thing and you scale it, it scales both the edges. If you press the like one single edge, scale it, it only scales one edge, right? So we scale it down to like near zero basically. So what it does is it gives us something like this. You don't want to be stopping it really fast, so it be something like this. Now I know it doesn't look clean. Now that we have the y-axis correctly, we can hide it. We need to hide it basically. It's good to hide it. So now over here we can see clearly. So sometimes people, so this is the thing which I was talking about earlier, that sometimes people look at the graph editor and see that okay, the animation is basically the mimicking of these curves. So does that mean if the curve is like this, that means the body is gonna go like this? It doesn't mean that. It's just showing us the movement basically in curve or wave formats. So over here, what we can do is I'll just open another window too, or from this top. So to open another window, you go to one edge, hold left click and drag down. Now I can change it to a timeline and drag it down a bit more. So here, let's see, let's make it a bit smaller. Then we make this one even more smaller. And then these end ones are just like, let's make them like this. See how that works. Yeah, let's see how that works. Nah, it doesn't work good. This, okay. So now we will give this basically hang time, and we'll also remove this part over here because it slows down at the end. We don't want to do that. So I click on, I'll basically hide these other curves. I'll click on all these bottom ones, these things, and scale them down. But before scaling them down, I'll click on this thing, which is pivot point, and I'll come here down to individual centers. What this is, basically if it's on a bounding box and you scale it up, it makes an imaginary box which is this big, and if you scale it up, everything in it goes up, which is like the pivot points and everything. Then there's the 2D cursor. So wherever your 2D cursor is, it puts that place as a pivot point and it scales up from that. So it goes on that axis. Then there's the individual centers. Now this is my favorite one, because if I scale it up, it won't move the pivot points, but it will move these and like these arm thingies. So you scale it. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically eliminate all that. I'm gonna do it like this. So now I'm gonna be getting a bit better understanding basically. Now for these things over here, I'll make them hang this, especially this one, I'll make it have a bit more hang time over here. So I will increase um, this curve, make it a bit more rounded, because in stylized animation usually the hang time is a bit better. I'll do the same for this one and the same for this one. This one is a bit bigger, so I'll try to make this smaller and see how this works. This one's also bigger. Try to make it smaller. Or we can just leave this one, the last one. I'm going to be spending a lot of time. So see, this is a ball which is coming down, but right now it's way too fast. What we can do is select everything like this and we scale it. So now it's a bit more better. Since we scaled it up, we need to fix these, make the curves better. Sometimes we have to deal with this. Now the curves are done. It's looking good and everything. It shows us everything. Okay, now one another thing is showing you how you can see if you don't like use graph editor like me, because there's something else which you might not know, is this, which is the rotation mode. So right now we haven't gone to the rotation mode, but if you go to rotations and go to more complex animations, you would need to use this quaternion. So this thing over here, you might wonder why do we have all of these different type of rotations. We only need one, which is x, y, and z. Well, that's because in Euler, for some reason, if you try to rotate the middle axis, which in here it's y, it's z, x, z, y, and so on, right? If you try, so basically, it's if you rotate it at 180 degrees, it just messes around and it just goes berserk in every direction. So that's called a gimbal log, which is basically a pain. It's true pain. If you haven't felt pain when you feel you encounter a gimbal log in a complex animation, you'll know what I mean. So that's so basically, I don't want to feel that pain. I would rather not use this graph editor. That's why I use quaternions. So what quaternions do is it adds another layer of rotation axis, which is W. So what W does is it fixes the errors that you do, right? So if it's rotated at 180 degrees, the W will have some, it's a basically a complex algorithm behind it, but it changes its values, it changes all the other axes, and basically it means that you cannot use this graph editor efficiently, or even you, if it's even more complex, you can never use this graph editor, because over here in this case I know that this like this curve is that axis. When you have quaternions, if you move this ball might move like this in this axis, and this axis it isn't z, y, or x, it's some random axis combination of all these. That's how axis becomes in complex animations. But the plus side is that in the viewport, it's going accurately from point A to point B in rotation, not in location. So in location, everything is fine, but when it comes to rotation, everything falls apart. Right now, for now, we are only using location because that's simple, right? So if you click on this, right click and come down. If I can find it, there's something called motion path. So here it is. So I don't know why there isn't motion path in here. It's present in meshes like bones. If I go like this, click on it, there is motion path over here, but it's Blender, so you can't complain. So you go here to the object data properties, you come down to motion paths, and then you select your range. For us, it's gonna be 26 frames, so you press 26 here, press in range, and then we calculate. And so now this thing is like a visual representation of your ball's location. Sounds weird, but it's okay. So this thing over here, you can see how the ball is coming down. So over here we can see these spaces are a bit compact than all of these spaces. See over here, it's way bigger than this one. Same goes over here. Over here, it's way smaller than this one. So, and it goes on like that. See this? So over here, if you have some problem and this graph editor isn't working, this is another way to fix your mistakes that you've done, because Blender doesn't do mistakes. It's us. Anyways, we are going to be adding gauge and stretch to this now. So over here, it's basically the same. And let's try to do it with motion paths so we know where the fastest point is. So basically the fastest point is right over here. I'll put it over here since I can. Now over here, if I try to scale it in z-axis, it's gonna put in scale. It's only gonna do this in true z-axis. I don't want to do that. So there is a location, a local thingy over here. So if you press that and you rotate it, this thing, rotate it. So over here, the local stuff, not the local stuff, sorry. This local axis, it rotates over here, right? We'll also put this to individual origin and it's good. So this comes down like this. We can also use this. So now let me try to do some rotations. Before doing rotations, let me remove all the rotation data, because I don't want to be messing with this. Don't like to do that. I'll delete all the rotation data, so when I try to make rotations, it's good and all right. So over here, I'll rotate it like this. Now in 4, I'll rotate it like this. Comes down. And all right. So the way I'm looking at it, thanks. So the way I'm looking at it is this green line. See this green line. If I rotate it, let's say I rotate in the x-axis like this, the green line changes. Unlike Maya, when you try to change it, it doesn't show you this line in real time, but when you change it, it shows it to you. But yeah, it's no problem. I'll tell you why I'm doing this. So let's put it somewhere over here. It's good. So also put one right over here. So over here this becomes a bit messy, and don't worry, just take one step at a time, and that's how you do animations. That's why I didn't want it to go straight into walk cycles and stuff, because it's hard to explain what I'm doing in a walk cycle, because everything's flowing at the same time and it's a mess basically. And we'll do it only till 20 seconds basically. Okay, so now that I have this rotation ready, I can just scale it in z-axis and it's gonna scale correctly, because remember this ball is coming from this location to this. So if it scales in like z-axis, true z-axis, it's not gonna look good and it's not right. We have to stretch it from this point to this point because it's coming this way. That's why I had to make some rotations. Plus we also make it thinner. That's how it is. Before doing that, let me also clear the scale. You know what? The scale is good enough. I don't want to clear this. So now let's try to scale it. So if you want to add some squash over here too, you can add that like this, but I don't feel like it, so I'll just pass on that. Or here, let's over here we aren't gonna be like stretching it too much because the speed isn't that much over here. Going slower than this part, so it's gonna be a bit slow. Remember keep the volume the same. The volume shouldn't be like, it shouldn't be getting bigger or smaller, it's just gonna be stretching. So if it stretches in one direction, it squashes in the other one. Remember that, because you have to keep it real. That's how we are in the beast community. Over here you don't really need to put in squash and stretch, but you know me, I'll put it just a bit tiny amount. Same goes over here, put in just a bit of squash and stretch. So now let me remove this. The speed over here is a bit fast, so we'll fix that. We select all these, scale them. Let's see what this does. Now I'm just fixing the timings. See, comes down, goes up. So over here what I did is I put in one more frame, and let me squash it because I forgot to do that. That's how animation is. You forget something and then you fix it. See, over there it squashes. Fix the rotation. Now Over here, what I did is pressed Alt S. What Alt S does is, so if you press hold Alt, if you press S, R, or G, it basically removes that function. For S, it's scale. So if I press Alt and then press S, so if I hold Alt and press S, it removes the scale over here, because over here it doesn't need to stretch. I don't want it to stretch, so I just remove the stretch, puts in a keyframe. So once again, this auto keying came in clutch, because we don't need to put in a keyframe for scale every time. It does it automatically. You just do your own thing and it's gonna catch up to you. So yeah, over here I don't feel like adding another frame, because it's not gonna bounce a lot, it's just bouncing small. This bounces a bit too much for me, so I'll go to the graph editor. See this? You can also remove these keyframes. Increase this. Make this smooth. Same goes with this one. Okay, let's see it again. So this is basic ball bounce, which is going from left to right. I was planning on doing a pendulum 2 today. I thought it would just take like half an hour, but it took 1 hour, and we are at the 1 hour mark. We can't polish it more. So yeah, that would be the session for today.